Hey guys, tonight we're taking a trip, not the illegal kind, not the accidentally eat a 1972 gas station burrito and see God kind, but a journey back to an America so stressed out, so wired, and so spectacularly weird that its favorite national pastime wasn't baseball or disco, but collectively popping a tiny yellow pill called Valium. That's right, welcome to the 1970s, the only decade where people wore bell-bottoms with a straight face, decorated their homes with shag carpeting so thick you could lose a pet in it, and trusted their well-being to a drug whose side effects included, but were not limited to, feeling like you'd just been gently run over by a waterbed. So, before you settle in, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, switch on a fan for that white noise, and get as comfortable as possible. Let's pause for a second. Why was everyone on Valium? How did your parents survive raising you, your siblings, and that weird neighbor kid without Wi-Fi, iPads, or therapy dogs? Was Valium the emotional support animal of the disco era? What did people worry about before social media gave us the fear of missing out? Could you make it through a 1970s dinner party without medicinal help? Would you last a day listening to your boss, your spouse, your in-laws, and the constant drone of polyester rubbing against human skin? What happens if your leisure suit is more toxic than your stress level? And most importantly, would you remember any of it the next morning? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1977 America, on a plaid couch, surrounded by wood paneling, plants in macrame hangers, and the distant echo of a commercial that promises Mother's Little Helper is totally safe. Good luck. It's the mid-1970s, and you're already behind. Your clock radio blasts Stayin' Alive at 6:30 a.m., your hair looks like it's auditioning for a Bee Gees tribute band, and your main goal for the day is to not yell at your kids or your car. America is in a collective state of frayed nerves, and the living room carpet is hiding more secrets than Watergate. Let's talk about your morning routine. You stumble into a kitchen glowing with the strange yellow optimism of linoleum and orange cabinets. The coffee percolator wheezes to life like a small steam engine, filling the air with the rich scent of burned ambition. You pour yourself a mug that's roughly the size of a small child's head, because you know you'll need every last drop. Your spouse is already moving through the house like a background actor in their own private disaster film, muttering about carpools, gas lines, and how the neighbor's new above-ground pool is killing the grass. The kids, clad in pajamas that look suspiciously flammable, are fighting over the last packet of Pop-Tarts, which is probably the healthiest thing they'll eat all day. Before you can take your first sip, the news is on. Vietnam is ending, but nobody feels victorious. The economy is doing the Macarena. If the Macarena involved unemployment, inflation, and the occasional gas station fistfight, there are stories about crime rates, leaded gasoline, and an energy crisis so bad you wonder if you'll have to start burning your own furniture for warmth. It's no wonder everyone's eye is twitching like a disco strobe light. You watch Walter Cronkite deliver the day's grim headlines with the sort of calm resolve usually reserved for hostage negotiators. By the time you've finished your coffee, you're already reconsidering all your life choices. Now, let's talk about that famous 1970s decor. The living room is a fever dream of design. The shag carpet is a tripping hazard and possibly a biohazard if you dropped your car keys in it. There's a solid chance you'd never see them again. Macrame plant hangers dangle from every available surface, each one growing a different species of half-dead spider plant. The furniture is either avocado green, burnt orange, or patterned in a way that seems designed to induce low-level panic attacks. There's a wood-paneled wall, because why not make your house look like a forest ranger's station? And somewhere, there's a glass coffee table that doubles as a shin-destroying torture device. Every object in this house is designed to either comfort you or slowly undermine your sense of reality. The rotary phone is mounted on the wall, its cord stretched halfway across the kitchen, forming an obstacle course for anyone daring enough to attempt breakfast. There's a stack of Reader's Digest magazines next to the couch, a bowl of hard candies so ancient their original flavor is now archaeological, and a record player gently warping your favorite LPs. You sigh, not for the first time, and remember that no one in this decade has ever willingly relaxed. Not once. Relaxation is something that happens to other people in Sweden maybe. You get dressed. The polyester is tighter than your budget and twice as unforgiving. If you move too quickly, you risk generating enough static electricity to jumpstart the neighbor's Pinto. Your shoes squeak, your tie feels like it's out for revenge, and you head to work with a vague sense of dread, only slightly mollified by the prospect of a lunch hour spent in your car, eating a sandwich that tastes like refrigerator and regret. Even stepping outside is its own adventure. The air smells faintly of gasoline, lawn chemicals, and whatever your neighbor is burning in the barbecue. Kids zoom by on banana seat bikes, unsupervised and fueled by raw sugar and the promise of Saturday morning cartoons. You wave at the mailman. He's the only person in America who knows everyone's secrets, and he keeps them safe behind aviator sunglasses and a stoic silence. By noon, you're already mentally exhausted. The day feels longer than Nixon's resignation speech, and you're just hoping to make it through with all your hair and at least one functional appliance. Welcome to 1970s America, a place where stress is king, the decor is a fever dream, and the only thing holding society together is a fragile web of sighs, sarcasm, and maybe, just maybe, a little yellow pill in the medicine cabinet, just in case. Before Valium, nerves were shot and the vapors were a medical emergency. But in 1963, scientists invented a pill that basically told your nervous system to take a vacation. By the 70s, it was as American as apple pie. If your apple pie was prescribed and possibly habit-forming. Let's rewind to a time when anxiety wasn't yet a clinical diagnosis. It was just being alive. In the 1950s, if you complained about your nerves, your options ranged from smelling salts to whiskey before noon. Maybe, if you were feeling especially dramatic, you'd collapse onto a fainting couch and demand someone open a window. Doctors had few tools for nervous conditions, and most of those tools were about as subtle as a sledgehammer. Think barbiturates, with side effects that included everything from chronic drowsiness to, oops, I stopped breathing. Then came Leo Sternbach, a chemist who looked at tranquilizers and said, "What if this didn't kill you?" Working for Hoffmann La Roche, Sternbach tinkered with molecules in a laboratory that, judging by photos, smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and existential dread. In 1963, he came up with diazepam, Valium to its friends. It was marketed as a minor tranquilizer, the medical equivalent of someone gently putting a blanket over your frazzled soul and shushing you until your heartbeat stopped doing the samba. The marketing was genius. Valium was pitched as safe, effective, and, most importantly, modern. No more shameful fainting spells or rest cures at expensive sanatoriums. Now, your doctor could hand you a tiny yellow pill and say, "Take one and call me when your children finally move out." By the time the Beatles broke up, Valium was climbing the charts, and by the 1970s, it had gone platinum. America didn't just accept Valium, it threw it a ticker tape parade. Suddenly, everyone was a little bit anxious, and everyone's doctor had the perfect solution. Are you a housewife feeling overwhelmed by laundry and the existential horror of Jell-O molds? Take a Valium. Is your husband irritable, overworked, and starting to suspect that the neighbor's hedge is judging him. Here, have two. Grandparents. Surely they deserve a prescription for raising your parents. Valium's greatest achievement wasn't just medical, it was making anxiety democratic, something you could pick up at the pharmacy alongside your deodorant and 3 gallons of milk. Let's talk about the commercials. Men in white coats. Always men. Always with a dignified amount of forehead, smiling calmly and explaining that Valium can restore your peace of mind. Mothers gently cradling children, bosses shaking hands with a serene, lightly sedated smile. If you watch the ads now, you'd think Valium was the missing link between humanity and inner peace. Or, at the very least, between you and screaming at the slow cashier at the A&P. The science, meanwhile, was delightfully vague. We think it calms the central nervous system, the experts said. But don't worry about the details. The average American was just happy they could finally sleep through their neighbor's endless trumpet practice. Valium didn't cure your problems. It just made you care about them less, which, honestly, is what most people really wanted. Have a deadline at work? Take a Valium. Worried about your teenager's grades, fashion sense, or the fact that he wants to join a band? Take another. Of course, the pill's rise wasn't just about chemistry. It was about culture. The world was spinning faster. Assassinations, Watergate, gas shortages, polyester suits that rustled with every step. If ever there was a decade in need of a chill-out button, it was the 1970s, and Valium fit perfectly, promising serenity in a bottle, a tiny, swallowable pause button for the mind. Side effects? That's a problem for later, like cleaning out your rain gutters or learning what dependency means. So by the mid-1970s, Valium wasn't just a drug, it was a mascot, a tiny, mellow icon of American progress, optimism, and desperate hope that life could finally be taken down a notch. You could almost hear the sigh of relief from coast to coast, echoing off the shag carpet. For the first time in history, America didn't just treat anxiety, it gave it a little yellow cape, a prescription, and a place in every medicine cabinet in the land. In a world where everyone's got a family doctor and a family doctor's got a prescription pad, you barely needed to say, "I'm feeling a little tense," before you left the office with a bottle. It was like Amazon Prime for your emotions. No questions asked. 2-day shipping on inner peace. Let's set the scene. You walk into the doctor's office, past a fish tank full of algae and traumatized goldfish, and sit on a vinyl chair that squeaks with every movement, an accidental sound effect for your anxiety. The doctor appears in his crisp white coat, clipboard in hand, the very picture of 1970s authority. He asks what brings you in today, but he's already got the prescription pad poised like a game show buzzer. Stress? He suggests. As if it's a diagnosis and a dare. You nod, and suddenly you're being handed a bottle of Valium with the efficiency of a drive-through. Doctors in the 70s were not just healers. They were the original subscription service. Forget in-depth consultations or holistic wellness. This was an era before WebMD, when nobody had Googled, "Are my symptoms fatal?" at 3 in the morning. Medical training was solid, but bedside manner was more get 'em in, get 'em out. Your doctor might check your blood pressure, shine a flashlight in your ears, and then, almost as an afterthought, offer to renew your Valium. Maybe you'd get a pamphlet about eating more fiber, but you were definitely getting that refill. It wasn't entirely their fault. Pharmaceutical reps swept through town in shiny cars, armed with free pens, branded tissues, and the promise of clinical calm in a pill. They'd take your doctor to a state lunch, show off colorful charts, and hand out samples like Halloween candy for grown-ups. In the break room, There might be a whole stack of Valium-branded notepads just waiting to be used to write your next prescription. The office manager probably had a drawer full of tranquilizer samples for emergencies, which in probably had a drawer full of tranquilizer samples. 1974 included Mondays, Tuesdays, and the presence of small children. The social contract of medicine was different. Patients expected their doctor to solve everything. Insomnia, marriage stress, existential dread, that weird tingling in your leg. Doctors, meanwhile, were more than willing to oblige. Why not hand out a solution that made everyone just a little more pleasant? If you weren't at least a little sedated, were you even really a patient? Medical records from the time read like bedtime stories. Patient anxious, unable to relax. Prescribed Valium. Patient less anxious. Problem solved. The waiting room became a sort of social club for the nervously inclined. Women chatted about recipes. Men compared lawnmower brands. And everyone exchanged tips on who had the fastest refill service. If you had a doctor who wrote for 100 pills at a time, you recommended him at block parties and left his number on the fridge next to the emergency plumber and the best coupon for frozen peas. For many doctors, it was the path of least resistance. No one wanted to tell a mother of 3 that maybe, just maybe, she should take up yoga or try breathing exercises. Telling Dad that his heart palpitations were mostly stress? Much easier to write take one 3 times a day. Even teenagers weren't immune. Valium for pre-exam jitters, Valium for a bad breakup, Valium because someone in the house still had a lava lamp. Of course, the system had its flaws. There were always a few patients who pushed their luck, collecting prescriptions from every doctor within a 50-mile radius, and showing up at pharmacies like loyalty card collectors at a Black Friday sale. But most people trusted the system, and the system trusted Valium. By the end of the decade, American medicine cabinets were as well stocked as pharmacies. Doctors had become the unofficial gatekeepers of calm, writing scripts for a nervous nation 1 bottle at a time. Nobody asked too many questions. Why would you, when the answer came in such a convenient, chewable tablet? The doctor would see you now, and he'd send you home just a little bit quieter than you arrived. You're a 1970s housewife. Your job, manage 3 kids, a demanding spouse, PTA meetings, and a casserole so dense it might collapse into a black hole. The only thing standing between you and a nervous breakdown is the miracle of modern chemistry. Let's start at the crack of dawn. The alarm blares, and you're already running behind, because in the 1970s, sleeping in means it's 6:45 a.m., and your youngest is finger painting on the new wallpaper with grape jelly. You shuffle into the kitchen, the floor sticky with something unidentifiable, and pour yourself the first of 7 cups of instant coffee. The dog needs to go out. The laundry pile has achieved sentience, and you can hear the toilet running upstairs, which means one of your children is about to start their day by flooding the bathroom. Again, your uniform is part fashion statement, part cry for help. A polyester dress patterned with daisies, an apron with a pocket full of broken crayons, and hair set in curlers that promise volume but mostly deliver headaches. Your feet are already throbbing, and you haven't even stepped out of the kitchen yet. The radio's on. Donna Summer or Fleetwood Mac. Someone wailing just loud enough to drown out the fighting over who gets the last bowl of sugar smacks. The husband breezes in, tie crooked, grumbling about the stock market or gas prices or the fact that the kids keep changing the channel to Sesame Street. He expects breakfast, a clean shirt, and the answers to the universe's problems, delivered with a smile. If you hand him a slice of cold pizza and a mug of Sanka, he acts like you've just handed him an eviction notice. The kids are late for the bus, and 2 of them forgot their shoes. You mentally count down the minutes until nap time. Not for them, for you. Let's talk about errands. You don't just go to the store. You wage war against coupons, navigate grocery aisles wider than some European highways, and do mental math, while 3 children beg for neon cereals and the world's stickiest lollipops. You get home, unload groceries, realize you forgot the milk again, and immediately begin prepping for dinner, which will inevitably involve cream of mushroom soup, 3 pounds of shredded cheese, and the haunting knowledge that potluck means you're probably cooking for your neighbor's surprise divorce party too. Then there's the PTA. Oh, the PTA. Hours spent planning bake sales, chaperoning school dances, and constructing banners out of felt and suppressed resentment. Every meeting is a performance review, and the dress code is try to look like you haven't been crying in your station wagon. You field phone calls from the principal, manage permission slips, and maintain a running tally of which kid needs to be at which after-school event, which is somehow always on the opposite side of town from everything else in your life. And don't even get started on cleaning. Dust bunnies the size of chihuahuas, carpets that seem to multiply crumbs, and an endless parade of sticky fingerprints, broken toys, and crumpled school projects that will, for the next 30 years, be unearthed from behind the washing machine. If you sit down for 5 seconds, someone appears out of nowhere asking what's for dinner, where their shoes are, or why the goldfish is upside down. All this, and you're supposed to do it with poise, patience, and just the right amount of eyeshadow. If you snap, if you lose it for a second and lock yourself in the bathroom just to breathe, well, there's always that bottle in the medicine cabinet. Mother's little helper, as the magazines say. The Valium you got from Dr. Richardson after you confessed that sometimes the pressure feels like a bowling ball on your chest. Take half a tablet, and suddenly the world softens around the edges. The casserole still weighs 10 pounds, the dog still sheds, and your youngest is probably colouring on the cat. But for a blessed moment, you can keep it together. The 1970s housewife wasn't just managing a home. She was quietly, heroically holding the universe together with grit, caffeine, and a prescription bottle tucked away behind the cough syrup. You did it all, and, thanks to chemistry, you managed to do it without setting the drapes on fire. At least not today. It wasn't just the ladies. Dads too were clocking in, clocking out, and clocking a few Valium at the end of a shift. Work was relentless, bosses were loud, and sometimes the only escape was a quiet pill and the sound of a baseball game through a single earbud. Let's step into Dad's shoes, loafers probably, or the same battered sneakers he's had since the Johnson administration. His workday starts before sunrise, the alarm blaring, and the coffee percolator burbling in the kitchen like a tired old locomotive. He grabs his briefcase, which is mostly just a portable lunchbox with some paperwork crammed in, and heads out the door with a sigh that can be heard 3 houses down. Commuting in the 1970s isn't the zen-like podcast session it is today. There's traffic, car horns, and the constant threat of being rear-ended by a station wagon loaded with more kids and seatbelts. Dad merges onto the freeway, adjusting the car radio between static and the voice of a sports announcer who sounds only marginally more awake than he is. Gas is expensive, tires are unreliable, and the air smells vaguely of exhaust and lost hopes. At work, Dad joins a sea of men in brown ties and shirts with collars so wide they could double as landing strips. The office is a fluorescent-lit paradise of typewriters, rotary phones, and cigarette smoke so thick it's basically weather. Everyone's hunched over paperwork, pretending not to notice the boss pacing the floor with a coffee mug and a look that says, "You're all replaceable." Meetings are endless, coffee breaks are sacred, and the only real excitement comes when someone jams the copier and everyone stands around watching, as if hoping the machine might burst into flames and end the suspense. Lunch isn't much better. It's eaten at his desk, a bologna sandwich, a bag of chips, and the kind of apple that's more sticker than fruit. Sometimes he gets 20 minutes of peace in the break room, where the vending machine dispenses sodas, existential dread, and the occasional stale Twinkie. Somebody always complains about the thermostat. Too hot, too cold, too much business. The modern office was invented in the 70s as a sort of long-running endurance contest for the human spirit. Dad clocks out at 5, or 6, or 7, gets stuck in more traffic, and arrives home to a chorus of kids fighting over the TV and a spouse who, let's face it, is also running on fumes. The man cave isn't a finished basement with neon beer signs. It's the garage, the den, or even just the front seat of the car parked quietly in the driveway. Dad turns on the ball game, pops the tab on a can of beer, and, on particularly tough days, washes down a small Valium with whatever soda is left from lunch. It's not that he wants to tune out, it's that sometimes the world is just too loud. Let's be clear, talking about feelings is not in the 1970s Dad handbook. He doesn't vent, he doesn't journal, and if you asked about self-care, he'd think you meant mowing the lawn in a straight line. Instead, he listens to the play-by-play, polishes his tools, and maybe rewinds the tape deck to hear that one Motown song that makes everything feel a little less frantic. The stress is there, just pressed down under layers of responsibility, societal expectation, and the quiet knowledge that he's supposed to be the rock, never the river. Every so often, he goes to the doctor, usually for back pain, headaches, or something called tension. The doctor nods, asks about his workload, and then writes a prescription for Valium without blinking. Take one if things get rough, the doc says, and Dad does. He keeps the bottle hidden on a high shelf, right behind the emergency flashlight and the instruction manual for the dishwasher. So Dad survives. He goes to work, comes home, puts on the game, and occasionally lets modern chemistry do the heavy lifting. The man cave isn't just a place, it's a state of mind. One where, if only for a half hour, the world gets quieter, the chores wait, and nobody asks him to fix anything except maybe his own mood. In the end, Valium didn't solve his problems, but it gave him the pause he needed, just enough to keep showing up day after day. In the land of relentless hustle and barely repressed sighs, the economy's a mess. The Cold War is colder than your neighbor's Jell-O salad, and someone just installed mirrors on the bedroom ceiling. Everyone's tense, anxious, and quietly convinced their life is an after-school special gone off the rails. Let's take a little inventory of the background noise humming in every American's head during the 1970s. Inflation is rising faster than your electric bill. Gas lines stretch for blocks. And every trip to the supermarket is a choose-your-own-adventure in price hikes and disappointing produce. Your paycheck doesn't seem to last as long as your patience, and both are wearing thin. Every news broadcast is a montage of national headaches, political scandals, global unrest, and a weather report that always seems to end with unseasonably miserable. It's no wonder people are considering shag carpeting a comfort item. It's the only thing soft enough to absorb all those anxious footsteps. The Cold War? Oh, it's there. You can't escape it. You watch movies about nuclear disaster and then immediately check under the bed, just in case. Your kids come home from school describing duck and cover drills like they're talking about a surprise pop quiz, and you nod along, pretending this isn't normal while quietly envying their ability to turn existential dread into playground gossip. There's a new flavor of anxiety in the air, and it's everywhere, seeping through the wood paneling, woven into your wide-collared shirts, and bubbling up in the punch bowl at every potluck. Domestic life isn't helping either. Parenting manuals are just starting to exist, But every chapter seems to end with the phrase, consult your doctor or try not to panic. Relationships are in a strange place. Half your friends are getting divorced. The other half are starting encounter groups or joining cults. If you need advice, you could always consult Ann Landers. But odds are, her solution involves more self-discipline and less disco. Even leisure time has a nervous edge. Self-help books multiply on bedside tables, and meditation records promise peace, love, and the chance to not yell at your neighbor for mowing the lawn at 7 a.m. It's not just the big things. Everyday life feels like it's vibrating with tension. Telephones ring with bad news and awkward silences. The TV is a carousel of urgent headlines, daytime dramas, and commercials reminding you that you aren't quite thin, happy, or organized enough. You're supposed to keep up, keep calm, and keep buying. But nobody knows what they're chasing anymore. Maybe you're supposed to find inner peace in a macrame class. Or maybe you just need to get your shag carpet professionally cleaned. Again, let's not forget the pressure to look cool while feeling perpetually uncool. You're surrounded by people who dress like they're auditioning for a game show. Everyone smells like some combination of musk and panic. And you can't tell if your neighbor is throwing a fondue party or a seance. Your parents are worried. Your kids are weird, and somewhere, somehow, the dog is chewing up something important, but you're too tired to check. The result? A nation living in a state of mild but permanent panic. Nobody talks about anxiety like it's a medical condition, just a side effect of being alive. You mention your worries at work, and someone slides you a Valium with their lunch order. You confess to your hairdresser that you haven't slept in 3 nights, and she whispers, "Don't worry, honey, everyone's tense." Have you tried deep breathing or just, Valium? At this point, even the guy at the hardware store is asking if you want your receipt, or just something to take the edge off. So, you do what you can. Maybe you go for a jog, join a consciousness-raising group, or just scream into a pillow and hope the neighbors don't call the police. Or maybe, like millions of your fellow Americans, you quietly count your Valium, pour a glass of tab, and try to relax for at least 10 minutes before someone needs something, the news breaks again, or you remember that you still haven't fixed the leak in the roof. Because that's the 70s mood, holding it together with duct tape, shag, and sedatives. And if you're lucky, you make it to bedtime with your sanity mostly intact. Your office smells like stale coffee and fear. Everyone is chain smoking, and your boss just told you to relax. Too bad his idea of relaxation is a golf game with his own heart surgeon. Enter Valium, the corporate team player of the decade. Let's take a stroll through the 1970s office. Picture endless rows of metal desks, half-broken typewriters, and the ever-present hum of a copy machine that jams at the slightest hint of productivity. There's a clatter of heels on linoleum, the steady click of adding machines, and a receptionist who's single-handedly running the place while reading romance novels under the desk. Every surface is covered in paper, ashtrays, and coffee rings so old they probably have their own social security numbers. If the decor doesn't make you anxious, the deadlines will. The workday starts with an elevator ride up to the 4th floor, wedged shoulder to shoulder with co-workers whose aftershave choices are best described as aggressive. You nod at everyone but say nothing. Because office etiquette is a delicate dance. One wrong move, and you're stuck next to Bob from accounting all day. When you finally escape the elevator, it's a race to your desk to claim the least lumpy chair, the one that doesn't threaten to throw out your back by 9:15. Meetings are where hope goes to die. You sit in a stuffy conference room, scribbling on yellow legal pads while someone flips through slides on an overhead projector. The air is so thick with cigarette smoke it could be sliced and served for lunch. Your manager drones on about synergy, proactivity, and stretch goals, but all you hear is the faint sound of your will to live escaping through the ceiling tiles. Every few minutes, someone coughs, a deep, hacking smoker's cough that doubles as a reminder of your own mortality. Someone else nervously shakes a bottle of antacids like maracas. There's a special kind of stress in the 1970s workplace, the kind that can't be fixed with a coffee break or an inspirational poster about teamwork. Office politics are a full-contact sport. Gossip travels faster than inter-office mail, and every promotion is accompanied by enough backstabbing to qualify for a minor Shakespearean tragedy. You keep your head down, hope your stapler works, and try to avoid eye contact with the guy who's been working the same job since 1954 and has a collection of mysterious mugs. When things get tense, the corporate solution isn't a team-building retreat or a lunchtime yoga class. It's a trip to the doctor for a little pharmaceutical peace. Valium is handed out for nerves, tension headaches, and that thing where your left eye twitches every time someone says synergy. You're not expected to manage your anxiety. You're expected to medicate it, quietly, and then get back to work before your next quarterly review. Some offices keep a bottle in the supply closet, right next to the whiteout and the emergency fifth of gin. If you're feeling particularly edgy, you pop a pill at lunch and wash it down with a tab or a questionable cup of office coffee. Break rooms are a sanctuary of sorts. You gather with a few allies around a cracked Formica table, swapping war stories and debating whether it's worth risking the vending machine's ancient chicken salad sandwich. Someone jokes about running away and starting a commune in Vermont, but everyone knows you're too attached to your dental plan to actually leave. The conversation always circles back to the same thing. Is it Friday yet? The answer, tragically, is always no. By the time 5 o'clock rolls around, you're exhausted, slightly, sedated, and more than ready to go home. You pack up your briefcase, grab your trench coat, and join the mass exodus to the parking lot, where everyone's car is some shade of brown, and at least one person is pounding the steering wheel in traffic. The corporate world of the 70s is relentless, but thanks to Valium, at least you can make it to the weekend without screaming in the break room. Or, at the very least, you'll be too mellow to care. The pharmaceutical reps are here, and they've brought donuts. They're also handing out branded pens, stress balls, and pamphlets promising that Valium is non-addictive. Sure, January, you'll believe anything for a free notepad. Let's set the scene. You're a doctor in the 1970s, and your waiting room is bursting at the seams. Your patients are more anxious than a squirrel at a dog park, and half of them are only here because they read a Reader's Digest article about nerves. Enter the pharmaceutical reps, polished, perky, and dressed in suits with lapels wide enough to double as airplane wings. They breeze into your office with boxes of fresh pastries and enough charm to sell snow boots in Miami. Their briefcases are packed with samples, glossy brochures, and a level of enthusiasm that borders on suspicious. The pitch is simple. Valium is the answer to your patient's every problem. From can't sleep to can't cope. The reps flash clinical studies and graphs that climb faster than oil prices. They use words like revolutionary, breakthrough, and doctor recommended while you're halfway through a cruller. Pamphlets pile up on your desk. Smiling families, peaceful sunsets, maybe a dog napping by the fire, all apparently brought to you by the magic of diazepam. It's not just the doctors who are targeted. Valium is marketed directly to the public in magazines, on TV, and even in the advice columns. Do you feel overwhelmed? Asks the ad, as if there's anyone in America who isn't. Do you sometimes want to run away and join the circus? The answer, again, is yes. There's a pill for that, and its name is Valium. The ads promise you'll be more relaxed, better rested, and possibly immune to the sound of your neighbor's teenager learning electric guitar. The marketing frenzy is relentless. By the time you've finished your coffee, you've been handed a Valium-branded calendar, a stack of sticky notes, and an invitation to a relaxation seminar at the local steakhouse. The reps insist Valium is non-habit forming, non-drowsy, and non-problematic. The list of side effects is printed in a font so small you'd need a microscope and a free afternoon to decipher it. But who has time for that when there are stress balls to squeeze and donut glaze to wipe off your tie? Physicians, battered by long hours and a tsunami of patient complaints, aren't immune to the charm. After all, the reps bring samples for educational purposes, and there's nothing like being able to give a patient a free trial and a smile. Plus, there's something reassuring about being part of the modern medical miracle parade. Why recommend slow, complicated therapy when you can write a prescription in 30 seconds and be a hero? For the pharmaceutical companies, this is a golden age. Advertising budgets balloon, jingles about peace of mind fill the airwaves, and executives toast to quarterly reports with champagne and, presumably, Valium. Their greatest invention isn't just the drug. It's the idea that every problem, big or small, has a chemical solution. Stressed? Take a pill. Anxious? Take another. Still anxious? Increase the dose. And here's a branded tissue to dry your tears. And if anyone dares raise an eyebrow, there's always a study, a graph, or a smiling rep ready to reassure you. It's non-addictive, they say. It's perfectly safe, they promise. Sure, some doctors are skeptical, but when you're outnumbered by free coffee mugs and your calendar says, lunch with Roche rep every other Tuesday, it's easy to go with the flow. So, as the 1970s roll on, Valium is everywhere. At home, at work, and in the pages of every glossy magazine in the dentist's office. The medical miracle has become a marketing juggernaut, sweeping up doctors, patients, and anyone with a mailbox. You might not believe every claim, but admit it, you'll take the free pen, and maybe, just maybe, the sample too. Grandma takes Valium for her nerves. Mom takes it for her migraine. Dad claims it's for his back. Even the dog's looking suspiciously calm. The family medicine cabinet is now the most popular room in the house. Let's step into the 1970s household. A place where stress travels by osmosis and the solution, conveniently enough, comes in a small amber bottle with a child-proof cap nobody can actually open. The medicine cabinet is a shrine to modern life. Aspirin, cough syrup, a bottle of something with a label faded by time, and, front and center, the family's precious supply of Valium. It's wedged between a box of Band-Aids and a mysterious jar of vapor rub. Anyone needing a little help knows exactly where to look. The ritual is subtle but universal. Grandma, who survived the Great Depression and a husband who once built his own lawnmower, now finds the world's pace too fast, the TV too loud, and the grandkids a little too enthusiastic. I just need something for my nerves, she says. And her doctor, a kindly man with more hair in his ears than on his head, obliges without a second thought. One tablet later, Grandma is quietly watching her stories, unbothered by the chaos unfolding around her. Mom's reason is different, but equally familiar. Migraine is the code word in a decade where you're not supposed to admit you're overwhelmed. Even as you juggle meal planning, child wrangling, and a career as a part-time taxi driver for Little League and ballet practice. A headache is socially acceptable, and the solution is, naturally, a quick trip to the medicine cabinet. Mom emerges half an hour later, just a little softer around the edges, ready to face the burning casserole and the science project that is due tomorrow morning. Dad, ever the stoic, claims it's for his back, and sometimes it is, after all. That yard isn't going to mow itself, and the station wagon isn't going to fix its own flat tire. But let's be honest. Sometimes it's just for being a dad in the 70s, with its unique blend of workplace stress, home repair disasters, and the lingering fear that someone will ask him to have feelings. A little Valium and a ball game are the American version of a spa day, minus the cucumber water and hot stones. Then there's the family pet. Okay, so the vet prescribed something for the dog after the last fireworks incident. But now, Fido lounges on the couch like he's listening to Pink Floyd and questioning the nature of existence. The line between medical necessity and let's all just calm down has never been fuzzier. The result? A household that operates on a gentle, pharmaceutical glide. The bumps and scrapes of daily life are handled with an almost suspicious tranquility. Sibling squabble? Someone suggests a snack and a nap. Appliance breaks? Dad shrugs and writes it on a list for next weekend. Grandma's in her rocking chair, humming. Mom's at the table with a magazine. And somewhere in the background, the record player's spinning something mellow. There's a sense that, come what may, no one is going to flip the kitchen table over a burned pot roast or a C- in algebra. It's not all perfect, of course. Sometimes the calm comes at the cost of a missed conversation or an afternoon spent in a haze. But nobody's raising their voice, and family game night ends without a single thrown Monopoly piece. The only raised eyebrow is when someone counts the number of prescription bottles and realizes the refills are getting low. The 1970s medicine cabinet was more than storage. It was the family therapist, referee, and peacemaker, all rolled into one. Multi-generational calm, brought to you by modern science, mild denial, and the knowledge that, at the end of the day, everyone's just doing their best to get by. Even the dog. From Wall Street wolves to Main Street mailmen, everyone's got worries. Mortgage rates are up, jobs are down, and someone just said the word stagflation at the dinner table. It's a perfect storm for pharmaceutical profits. Let's start with the big picture. The entire country is living on a knife's edge. It doesn't matter if you're hustling in a Manhattan skyscraper or sorting letters in a small town where the biggest excitement is a new flavor at the local ice cream parlor. Nobody's immune to the background radiation of anxiety in 1970s America. You check the headlines, and it's nothing but a parade of problems. The stock market is behaving like a roller coaster designed by a sleep-deprived raccoon. The job market is shrinking, unless you count occasional babysitting for the neighbor's unruly kids as gainful employment. You start every morning with a new financial worry and end every night with a different one. For Wall Street types, the pressure is intense. Picture men in pinstripe suits running between payphones, waving stacks of ticker tape and muttering about oil embargoes like they're personal insults. There's a reason Gordon Gekko didn't smile much. The entire financial industry runs on espresso, ulcer medication, and the fear of missing out on the next big thing. A single wrong move could mean the difference between a Hamptons vacation and eating instant noodles at your desk while your tie slowly strangles you. Meanwhile, out on Main Street, the mood isn't much brighter. Local businesses are closing. For sale signs pop up faster than dandelions. And every other neighbor is worried about layoffs. People gather at coffee shops and supermarkets not just to shop, but to swap strategies for surviving another round of price hikes. Even the mailman, long considered the calmest, most unflappable member of the community, looks a little on edge, eyeing the mailbox like it might bite him back. It's not paranoia if the economy really is out to get you. Households are tightening their belts, literally and metaphorically. Coupon clippers become legendary, and kids are introduced to the exciting world of no, we can't afford that. Dinner table conversation is less about what's new at school and more about how long can we go before turning on the heat. You know things are bad when you start measuring your success in gallons of gas. and how many weeks you can stretch a bag of rice. Every little expense is a new hill to climb, and at the top, all you find is another bill. With all this ambient stress, it's no wonder the pharmacy counter becomes the new confessional booth. Valium isn't just for nerves anymore, it's for surviving life in general. The pharmacist knows you by name, and not just because you always buy the discount shampoo. Doctors start to notice that when they ask, "Are you feeling anxious?" It's like offering a lifeboat on the Titanic. Suddenly, half the town's on a first-name basis with diazepam, and pharmaceutical companies are throwing parties you wouldn't believe. It's not just adults, either. Teens are under pressure to get into college, keep up with rapidly changing social trends, and avoid disappointing parents who are one missed mortgage payment away from a meltdown. Even teachers are feeling the burn. Overcrowded classrooms, ancient textbooks, and the very real possibility of a student bringing a ferret to show and tell for comic relief. The entire social fabric feels stretched thinner than a pair of discount pantyhose. So, what do people do? They get creative. Some join jogging clubs. Others take up meditation or yoga, or at least buy a book about it. Most, though, take the path of least resistance. A quick trip to the doctor, a brief description of that tightness in my chest, and a prescription for peace in a bottle. Wall Street, Main Street, doesn't matter. Everyone's just trying to survive another day, one pill at a time. In 1970s America, anxiety isn't just a private worry. It's the water everyone's swimming in. And, thanks to modern medicine, sometimes floating in just a little bit easier. It's Friday night at the local discotheque. The music is loud, the lights are wild, and you're just trying to keep your polyester from bursting into flames. Dancing is cardio, therapy, and, if you've had a little Valium, probably a tripping hazard. Let's set the mood. You walk through the parking lot, carefully, because platform shoes and potholes are a dangerous combination. Neon signs flicker like caffeinated fireflies, promising the hottest party this side of the highway. The line at the door is a catwalk of questionable fashion decisions. Collars so wide you could use them as sails, gold chains swinging, and enough aquanet in the air to create its own weather system. You finally make it inside, where the disco ball spins above the crowd like a beacon for every anxious soul looking to dance their troubles away. The bass is thumping so hard it rattles your fillings. Donna Summer's voice is soaring. The Bee Gees are falsettoing for their lives, and somewhere, a DJ is making dramatic eye contact with his own reflection. You elbow your way to the bar, where the drinks are suspiciously fluorescent and the bartender wears sunglasses because subtlety died in 1974. The air is thick with anticipation, smoke, and the kind of perfume that could stun a small mammal. You're here to dance, sure, but you're also here to forget. For one glorious night, you can pretend you don't have bills, your boss doesn't exist, and the only inflation you're worried about is how to get your hair higher than your neighbors. You hit the dance floor, where the rules are simple. Move as if nobody's watching, and, if they are, hope their vision is blurred by the light show. Every song is an anthem, every move is a tiny act of rebellion against the grind of daily life. For some, disco isn't just about fun, it's self-care. You've had a week that felt like a year, and right now, the best medicine is to lose yourself in the rhythm. And if you took a little something to help you loosen up, well, you're not alone. Valium and vodka are a classic combo, recommended by nobody but tried by many. It's the era's unofficial pre-game ritual. Take the edge off before you ever hit the dance floor. The only side effect is occasionally forgetting whether you're dancing to the beat or just kind of swaying in existential confusion. Of course, the disco isn't just for the young. This is a cross-generational party. Divorcees, college students, off-duty, teachers, even your neighbor with the suspiciously calm poodle, everyone's here. The shared goal is to leave anxiety at the coat check and chase a few hours of joy, or at least mutual distraction. The conversations are shouted over the music, and the laughter is just a little too loud. But that's okay. Everyone's pretending, for just one night, that everything's all right. As the night goes on, the dance moves get wilder, the hair gets bigger, and the stories get better. Nobody cares if your Travolta impression needs work, or if you're still haunted by the time you spilled a drink on your own shoes. The floor is sticky, the lights are dizzying, and you've already forgotten what you were worried about, or maybe you just don't care. Either way, disco has done its job. By 2 a.m., you stumble outside, your ears ringing, your shirt somehow more flammable than when you arrived. The night air is a shock, and for a moment, you're floating somewhere between exhaustion and happiness. Your problems will be waiting for you in the morning, but right now, under the buzzing neon and fading echoes of Stayin' Alive, you've danced your anxiety into submission. In the 1970s, disco wasn't just a genre, it was therapy with better lighting. And if you needed a little pharmaceutical assistance to survive it, well, you weren't alone on the dance floor. You've scheduled yourself into a nervous breakdown. The kids' schedules are color-coded, you're running on fumes, and every parent at the playground looks like they just heard a ghost story about processed food. Valium makes the merry-go-round a little less dizzying. Let's step into the world of 1970s suburbia, where the lawns are manicured, the cars are always just a little too large, and the soundtrack is the clatter of skateboards and the distant echo of ice cream truck jingles. On paper, this should be the American dream. Single-family homes, friendly neighbors, block parties, and a sense of safety. In reality, it's a high-pressure endurance test disguised as a potluck dinner. Every parent is convinced that if they don't sign up their kids for every activity, they'll fall behind and gasp, "Never make varsity." Your calendar is a riot of Sharpie colors, each representing a different child and a different commitment. Ballet, piano, soccer, brownies, Cub Scouts, orthodontist appointments, and that one time you accidentally double-booked swim lessons and karate. The family station wagon is less of a vehicle and more of a mobile command center, complete with sticky Cheerios, half a box of Kleenex, and a growing fossil record of French fries under the seats. Mornings are chaos. You're pouring cereal, tying shoes, signing permission slips, and refereeing fights over who gets the lucky bowl, all before you've even finished your first cup of Sanka. Lunches are packed with military precision, peanut butter wiped on bread with the steely resolve of someone who knows they're going to forget at least one lunchbox at some point this week. You briefly consider writing an inspirational note, but instead settle for remembering to put the juice box in the right backpack. At school drop-off, you merge into a line of minivans and sedans, waving to other parents who look equally haunted by the spectre of forgotten science projects and bake sales. There's competition for everything. Who's the class mom? Who brought the best cupcakes? Who managed to keep their white jeans white through an entire week of playground duty? It's a judgmental paradise, where the phrase snack time can strike terror into the hearts of the sleep-deprived and the gluten-tolerant alike. Playdates are coordinated like international summits. You phone other parents on a rotary, naturally, and navigate the unspoken rules about snacks, supervision, and whether your kid will come home humming the theme from Schoolhouse Rock or singing Staying Alive in a falsetto. Sometimes, in the brief lull between carpool runs and laundry loads, you sneak off to the bathroom just to breathe and pretend you can't hear your own name being called from down the hall. The playground is supposed to be an oasis, but it's really a minefield. You keep one eye on your child, mid-climb on the rusty jungle gym, one on the other parents gossiping about the principal's haircut, and a third on the clock, because if you're late for piano lessons, the piano teacher will give you that look again. Everyone is anxious about something. Food dyes, plastic toys, sun exposure, the looming threat of lice. Processed food is whispered like a curse. Someone always knows a kid who hasn't had sugar since 1969, and everyone is quietly sure you're doing it wrong. So where does Valium fit into this suburban ballet? It's tucked in a kitchen drawer, hidden behind the coupons and the S and H green stamps. It's the secret handshake of exhausted parents everywhere. Just half a tablet, and suddenly the chaos dims a notch. The carousel of commitments still spins, but you're a little less likely to fall off. You're not relaxed, exactly, but you're not screaming either. You can sit through a PTA meeting without fantasizing about living in a tent on a mountain. You can endure yet another game of chutes and ladders without contemplating an existential crisis. The suburban revolution wasn't just about raising perfect kids. It was about surviving the marathon of parenthood. One playdate, one committee, and, sometimes, one tiny pill at a time. Because under all the color-coding and smiling faces, everyone's just trying to make it through the day, hopefully with enough sanity left for tomorrow. Air travel in the 70s is glamorous if your idea of glamour is a chain-smoking pilot and in-flight turbulence that feels like utter parkour. Valium, for when you want to survive both peanuts and existential dread at 35,000 feet. Let's set the scene. You arrive at the airport wearing your Sunday best, because this is still an era where travel means a blazer, uncomfortable shoes, and hair that has been shellacked into submission. The terminal buzzes with the sound of polyester and the constant clatter of rolling suitcases that only roll in 3 out of 4 directions. You check your ticket at the counter, where the agent smiles through a haze of perfume so potent it could stun a flock of geese, and you head for your gate, which, by some law of nature, is always the farthest one from wherever you parked. The boarding process is a theatrical production in 3 acts. Standing in line, standing in a slightly different line, and then standing on the jet bridge, while pretending not to notice the couple in front of you, arguing over who forgot the travel toothbrush. You finally step onto the plane and are immediately hit by a wall of recycled air, stale coffee, and the faint aroma of nervous sweat. The seats are upholstered in colors that don't exist in nature: mustard, burnt orange, and a blue that can only be described as regret. You find your seat, wedge your bag under the chair in front of you, and take stock. There's a plastic-wrapped blanket the size of a dish towel, a pillow that's seen more takeoffs than you have, and a seatbelt that requires a minor engineering degree to fasten. The legroom is generous if you're under 5 feet tall or happen to be a contortionist. You smile politely at your seatmate, who is already elbow-deep in a paperback novel with a title like Airport or The Hostess Always Rings Twice. Takeoff is a drama all its own. The pilot welcomes you aboard in a voice so smooth you wonder if he moonlights as a late-night DJ. Then you notice the flight attendant offering drinks with a grin that's been practiced in a mirror since 1965. She pours coffee, orange juice, and, if you're lucky, a little something extra for your nerves. The fasten seatbelt sign blinks with the optimism of someone who has never experienced turbulence over Kansas. And then there's the smoking section, which, in true 1970s style, is separated from non-smoking by a thin curtain and wishful thinking. If you're nervous about flying, you're not alone. The newspapers are filled with stories about hijackings and emergency landings. The in-flight magazine gives you travel tips that mostly involve praying and not eating the fish. Your mind races with every bump, every mysterious noise, and every time the pilot makes an announcement in a tone that suggests everything's fine but really means we just lost an engine and a beverage cart. So what do? You do what everyone else does. You reach for your Valium. Maybe you got it from your doctor for flight anxiety. Or maybe you borrowed it from your aunt, who won't fly anywhere without it. Either way, you swallow half a tablet, take a sip of ginger ale, and try to focus on the in-flight movie, a blurry, barely audible version of Airport CNT7 starring people who look even more anxious than you. Soon, you find yourself mellowing out, even as the plane shudders through another pocket of turbulence, and your neighbor starts telling you about their dental work. The drinks cart rolls by, and you order a tomato juice and pretend you're the picture of calm. At 35,000 feet, every anxiety is amplified. The crying baby, the overly chatty retiree, the knowledge that your suitcase probably took an unscheduled trip to Detroit. But under the gentle cloud of your pharmaceutical co-pilot, you manage to survive the snacks, the seatbelt sign, and the existential terror of flying in a metal tube through the sky. By the time you land, you're equal parts relieved and numb, grateful for modern science, and ready to kiss the unyielding airport carpet. Flying the friendly skies was never so friendly or so tranquilized as it was in the age of Valium. Looking for love? Good luck. Dating in the 1970s means polyester suits, cologne that could stun a moose, and nerves so frayed you need a sedative just to get through dinner. Let's set the scene. It's Saturday night, and you're standing in front of the mirror, agonizing over your sideburns. You're wearing a shirt so brightly patterned it could be seen from space, and pants that make every step sound like someone crinkling a bag of potato chips. You apply your favorite cologne, a scent that promises rugged masculinity but delivers more of a chemical warning. Your heart's pounding, not with excitement, but with the creeping dread that you might accidentally set yourself on fire if you get too close to a candle. You've finally worked up the courage to call your date, on a rotary phone, no less, hoping nobody else in the house picks up on the other line and starts yelling about the phone bill. When you arrive to pick her up, you're greeted by parents whose only job seems to be inventing new ways to make you sweat. You both smile nervously, trying not to look like you've rehearsed this in your heads all week. The date itself? That's a minefield. Maybe you head to a trendy steakhouse where the salad bar looks suspiciously wilted and the music is just loud enough to guarantee you'll mishear every third word. Or maybe it's a movie theater with sticky floors, a mysterious smell, and a double feature starring Burt Reynolds and an inexplicably shirtless orangutan. If you're feeling fancy, there's always roller disco, where nothing says I'm emotionally available quite like falling on your face in front of a girl in glitter lip gloss. But here's the real challenge. You're supposed to be smooth, confident, and with it, even though you're sweating through your shirt and mentally counting the seconds until you can loosen your collar. The social scripts of the 70s are as rigid as your hair, and nobody has invented the concept of being vulnerable yet. If you fumble your words, you reach for your secret weapon, a discreet little pill tucked away in your pocket or purse, prescribed for nerves, but really just for making it through one more awkward evening. You're not alone. Dating is nerve-wracking for everyone. She's worried about her makeup melting, whether her shoes are too high, and if she'll have to explain what a feminist is to you over dessert. He's silently hoping his car starts, his cologne fades to tolerable, and that he doesn't spill spaghetti on his lap like he did last time. In the 1970s, romance is a contact sport, and Valium is the unofficial sponsor. As the night wears on, you both start to relax. Maybe it's the pill. Maybe it's the shared trauma of surviving a fondue restaurant. Or maybe it's the realization that nobody knows what they're doing anyway. The conversation stumbles into comfort. The laughter gets a little easier. And by the time you're slow dancing, under the glow of a mirrored ball, you've almost forgotten how much you wanted to crawl out of your own skin. But the nerves never completely go away. Every phone call is an ordeal. Every goodbye at the door is a calculated risk. Do you shake hands, hug, attempt the infamous goodnight kiss? Just wave awkwardly and back away slowly. There's no Tinder, no texting, and no safety net. The only buffer between your anxiety and outright panic is a prescription that says, take as needed for social interaction. Dating in the 1970s is as much about managing nerves as it is about finding love. The clothes are loud, the music is louder, and your inner monologue is a never-ending stream of self-doubt. But through a fog of hairspray, aftershave, and maybe a little pharmaceutical courage, you keep showing up, one dinner, one awkward conversation, one disco ball at a time, hoping to find that rare and precious thing, a second date. Why pay for therapy when you can get a prescription? The 1970s were the golden era of just take a pill for that. Mental health awareness? Maybe next decade. Let's rewind to an age when self-help was less about unpacking your feelings in a softly lit room and more about quietly swallowing your anxiety with a glass of orange juice. Therapy existed, sure, but only in the pages of magazine confessionals or whispered about at neighborhood bridge games. The idea of actually seeing a shrink was about as appealing as eating unsalted jello, something people knew about, but nobody wanted to admit they tried. The general consensus was, if you're struggling, the polite thing to do is keep calm and medicate on. Enter the self-help revolution. Paperbacks promising inner peace lined every bookstore display, with titles like I'm Okay, You're Okay, and How to Be Your Own Best Friend. You could learn about transactional analysis in one chapter, discover the power of positive thinking in the next, and never actually talk about your real feelings at all. The shelves were filled with the promise that you could fix yourself in 12 easy steps, or at the very least, keep your existential dread in check until the next new moon. If all else failed, you could try yoga, transcendental meditation, or primal scream therapy, though most people just ended up yelling into their pillows and calling it a night. In the middle of this self-help craze, doctors offered what felt like a shortcut. Valium, the little helper that worked in 30 minutes or less. Why spend hours on a couch when you could feel better by lunchtime? Instead of talking it out, you wrote it off, along with your copay, if you even had insurance. Pharmacists knew your secrets. They watched prescriptions for tranquilizers fly off the shelves like Tic Tacs, and nobody batted an eye. Everyone's stressed these days, they'd say, ringing up your refill with a knowing nod. The social stigma around mental health was strong enough to power a disco ball. If you confessed to feeling overwhelmed, the typical advice was, take a walk, have a drink, or just pull yourself together. And if none of that worked, well, maybe you just need a little something to help you relax. The fact that a little something was available by prescription only added to the aura of respectability. It wasn't a crutch, it was progress. TV and magazines were happy to join the chorus. Soap operas featured glamorous women who solved life's little setbacks with a delicate reach for the medicine cabinet. Advice columns, always written by someone named Anne or Abigail, explained that anxiety was normal, but pills were quicker. If anyone did mention therapy, it was usually with an arched eyebrow or a punchline about lying on a couch talking about your mother. Even sitcoms turned the whole thing into a joke. The neurotic character was always good for a laugh, provided they were properly sedated. Meanwhile, A quiet desperation crept through the suburbs and city apartments. People woke up anxious, lived all day in a fog of obligations, and fell asleep knowing tomorrow would be more of the same. The solution wasn't to unpack your baggage. It was to stack it neatly in a closet and lock the door. If you felt a little off, you weren't sick, you were busy. If you felt sad, you weren't depressed. You just needed a hobby or a stronger prescription. The closest many people got to self-reflection was the moment between swallowing a pill and deciding whether to read another chapter of The Road Less Traveled. Looking back, it's clear that the 1970s weren't exactly the golden age of emotional intelligence, but it was the era of the quick fix, the easy answer, and the cheerful belief that you could medicate your way through the messiness of being human. So you did, and for a while at least, that was good enough. You're eating dinner off a folding tray, watching Maz times H reruns, and the only thing more comforting than processed turkey loaf is the knowledge that Valium is in your system, and all your feelings are muted to a gentle hum. Welcome to the golden age of the American evening. 1 part nostalgia, 1 part sodium, all wrapped in a shimmering foil tray. The microwave hasn't quite taken over yet, so your TV dinner bakes away in the oven for an hour, filling the house with the unmistakable aroma of almost turkey and mashed potatoes that defy all rules of texture. The anticipation is half the fun, at least until you realize the apple cobbler compartment is now lava while the peas are still half frozen. Dinner isn't served at the dining table with polite conversation and starched napkins. It's an event that unfolds in front of the television, the warm glow of the screen reflecting off your aluminum tray. Everyone claims their own patch of the family room carpet, shuffling for prime seating closest to the TV and farthest from the dog. Trays balance precariously on knees, and if you're lucky, you have a TV tray that only wobbles a little. The show of choice is Maz times H, of course a comedy about war, bureaucracy, and people losing their minds in a tent, which somehow feels incredibly relatable. Alan Alda makes wisecracks between fake surgeries while you stab at your rubbery Salisbury steak, taking comfort in the knowledge that, just like Hawkeye, you too are getting by with a blend of humor and medicinal assistance. It's a ritual of relief, a little Valium before dinner, prescribed, of course, for your nerves, your tension, or maybe just your general dislike of overcooked green beans. The pill slips down with a gulp of orange soda, and suddenly the world seems less sharp, the news less alarming, the bickering of siblings less likely to end with someone locked in the bathroom. The tension of the day melts away. Not completely, but just enough for you to find the canned cranberry sauce surprisingly refreshing. Outside, the world might be teetering on the edge. Inflation, energy, crises, kids skateboarding down the middle of the street, and adults whispering about layoffs. Inside, though, the soundtrack is a laugh track and the promise of dessert. You don't have to talk about your feelings, or the fact that everyone seems a little more tired, a little more anxious, and a lot more dependent on routines that feel comforting because they don't ask too much. Conversations are brief, if they happen at all. Maybe someone mentions their day at work or school, but nobody lingers too long on the details. The news might flicker on between sitcoms, but nobody's really watching. The grown-ups are staring at the screen with the glazed look of people who've mastered the art of not thinking too much. The kids poke at their peas, parents poke at their emotions, and everyone pokes fun at Radar O'Reilly. The house is quiet except for canned laughter and the clink of aluminum forks against plastic trays. If this all sounds a little numbing, well, it is. But for millions, that was the point. The combination of processed food and prescription calm created an emotional safe zone, a space where nothing had to be fixed, nothing had to be solved, and the only thing expected of you was to finish your dessert and maybe remember to put your tray in the sink. Problems could wait until tomorrow, or the next episode, or maybe never. The ultimate comfort wasn't just the taste of artificially flavored mashed potatoes, it was the blessed quiet, the release from pressure, and the certainty that, at least for the next half hour, nobody needed to feel anything they didn't want to feel. For one peaceful evening, the world was reduced to a manageable size. One tray, one sitcom, one little pill at a time. By 1974, Valium is the king of the medicine cabinet. Doctors are handing it out like Tic Tacs, and pharmacies have to restock weekly. Somewhere, a pharmaceutical executive is lighting a cigar with a $100 bill. Let's step into the golden era of the little yellow pill. By the mid-1970s, if you opened any medicine cabinet in America, you'd find Valium sharing shelf space with toothpaste and half-used bottles of cough syrup from the Johnson administration. It's prescribed for nerves, insomnia, muscle spasms, tension headaches, stress, and any occasion where you might possibly consider sighing. Family doctors, specialists, and even the friendly dentist with the Elvis sideburns have a prescription pad ready and waiting. The numbers are staggering. At its peak, Valium prescriptions top 60 million a year. It's the best-selling drug in the country, a title it holds for over a decade. Pharmacies can barely keep up. Pharmacists start greeting their regulars by name, and the phrase, "take as needed," becomes America's unofficial motto. If you run out, no worries. Just call the doctor and explain that the holidays are coming up, or the neighbor's got a new dog, or you read the news today. That's reason enough. Valium fits seamlessly into daily life, a pharmaceutical Swiss Army knife. Got a test tomorrow? Valium. Mother-in-law coming to visit? Valium. Boss asks you to work late on a Friday? You guessed it, Valium. It's like a little magic eraser for the frayed edges of your sanity. Teenagers sneak them before big exams. Parents keep a bottle tucked behind the cereal, and Grandma's stash is the only thing standing between family dinner and a full-blown emotional apocalypse. Pharmaceutical companies are having the time of their lives. Hoffmann La Roche, the drugs maker, launches marketing campaigns so cheery you half expect the ads to break into song. TV commercials feature people gazing calmly out of windows, while print ads show entire families looking serenely at clouds, flowers, or nothing at all. Relief is just a swallow away, the copy reads, and America is more than happy to believe it. The company's stock soars, sales reps drive nicer cars, and someone at the top is definitely making their accountant nervous. Doctors are swept up in the tide. For every patient who comes in with real anxiety, there are 10 who just want something, anything, to take the edge off. Physicians don't always have time for talk therapy or detailed diagnoses. The healthcare system is overworked, and Valium is quick, effective, and blessedly easy to prescribe. Doctors become the gatekeepers of tranquility, handing out scripts with the efficiency of a fast food drive-through. Some keep samples in their desks, just in case. The white coat is no longer just a symbol of healing. It's also an honorary membership card to the National Guild of Chill. With so much demand, the supply chain turns into a minor logistical miracle. Warehouses are stocked, trucks roll out daily, and pharmacists learn to recognize the telltale Valium face, that hopeful look that says, "Please tell me you're not out." When a shipment is late, the collective anxiety in the waiting area could power a small city. Of course, not everyone is thrilled. Some doctors start to notice that their patients seem a bit too mellow, missing appointments or forgetting what day it is. A handful of watchdogs raise questions about dependency and withdrawal. But most people are too busy feeling calm to care. Side effects? Maybe. But in the land of perpetual tension, a little drowsiness is a small price to pay for peace of mind. By the end of the 1970s, Valium isn't just a drug, it's a lifestyle, a symbol of the age, the mascot of a nation searching for a break from reality. The boom goes on, fueled by stress, marketing, and the universal desire to turn down the volume on life, if only for a little while. You read the label, but only after your third dose. Drowsiness, memory loss, and a mysterious urge to buy more lava lamps. But hey, at least you're calm. Let's be honest. In 1970s America, nobody read the side effect labels the first time. If you were handed a prescription, you trusted the doctor and tossed the little folded insert into the trash, right next to last week's TV guide. The prevailing wisdom was that if your nerves were bad enough to need medication, you probably had bigger problems than a little mild sedation. So you popped the pill, took a deep breath, and enjoyed the fuzzy, velvety peace that followed. But then, maybe you started to notice a few odd things. Your mornings felt slower. So much so that the kitchen clock seemed to be running on its own version of Valium. Your memory, once sharp enough to recall which kid had ballet and which had judo, started to go a little soft around the edges. You forgot phone numbers, shopping lists, and, occasionally, what day it was. The family started finishing your sentences for you. And if you ever misplaced your keys, you could count on finding them in the refrigerator right next to the leftover meatloaf. The physical side effects were a real grab bag. There was drowsiness. For sure, the kind that crept in around mid-afternoon, making it nearly impossible to get through an episode of The Price is Right without a little nap. You'd wake up refreshed or maybe confused, with a TV dinner cooling on your lap and no recollection of how Mass times H ended. Your limbs felt a little heavier, your reflexes a little slower, and the world just a bit more muted. On the upside, this made you immune to the usual stressors, crying kids, telemarketers, and the neighbor's never-ending garage band. Sometimes there were stranger symptoms. People reported odd cravings, a new appreciation for macrame, and, yes, a sudden need to buy more lava lamps, maybe because they were so mesmerizing when your mind was in low gear. You might develop a fondness for soft lighting, mellow music, and carpets that looked suspiciously psychedelic. If you ever felt the urge to repaint your bedroom avocado green at 3 a.m, it could just be the Valium talking. There were social side effects too. Friends and family noticed you seemed more chill than usual. Maybe a little too chill. You laughed off small disasters, didn't get ruffled by bad news, and approached traffic jams with the zen of a Buddhist monk. While everyone else honked and fumed, you just turned up the AM radio and let the stress slide off like water on vinyl. The problem was, the calm came with a price. Sometimes you tuned out of conversations, missed deadlines, or found yourself halfway through a story without remembering how it started. And then there was the emotional flattening. Life's sharp corners were softened, but so were its peaks. Sure, you didn't cry during sad movies, but you also didn't get quite as excited about good news. Birthdays, promotions, even that time your favorite team finally won a game. They all passed in a pleasant but muted haze. The world felt safer, but maybe just a little less colorful. Eventually, the warnings caught up with the boom. Doctors and patients began to notice that some people struggled to stop taking Valium, experiencing headaches, irritability, and a gnawing restlessness when they tried to quit. Words like dependency and withdrawal crept into conversations, and the shine started to fade from America's favorite prescription. Still, for millions of people, the promise of peace outweighed the perils of side effects, at least for a while. After all, in a world full of anxiety, noise, and lava lamps, sometimes a little numbness felt like the best medicine money or insurance could buy. Even the stars are in on it. Musicians croon about Mother's Little Helper, actors joke about it on talk shows, and somewhere, a game show host is having a very relaxed meltdown. Welcome to the 1970s, where pop culture is as soaked in Valium as the era's carpet is soaked in spilled tab. If you needed proof that the little yellow pill had gone mainstream, all you had to do was turn on the TV or spin the radio dial. Everywhere you looked, celebrities were winking at America's collective tranquilized state, sometimes with affection, sometimes with alarm, and always with just enough plausible deniability to keep their publicists awake at night. It started with the music. The Rolling Stones gave us Mother's Little Helper, a bouncy tune about the pressures of modern life and the subtle joys of prescription medication. The song was tongue-in-cheek, but also deeply relatable to anyone who had ever stared into the abyss of a school bake sale or contemplated the existential horror of polyester leisure suits. Other musicians followed suit, with lines about pills to help you through weaving their way through the soundtracks of suburban malaise. If you listened closely, it seemed every third track was about escaping reality, whether with love, liquor, or the modern miracle of pharmaceuticals. Meanwhile, television embraced the Valium era with open arms and slightly droopy eyelids. Game shows featured contestants who seemed just a little too mellow when the pressure was on. Late-night talk shows were filled with self-deprecating banter about doctors' orders and chill pills. Comedians worked the topic into their routines. My doctor says I'm fine, but my Valium says otherwise. And the laugh tracks rolled on. Even soap operas weren't immune, with glamorous housewives popping pills between dramatic revelations and the occasional evil twin. Actors and actresses dropped hints about their own habits in interviews, their confessions carefully choreographed for maximum relatability and minimum scandal. If you watched enough episodes of The Tonight Show, you'd notice the sly jokes about Hollywood nerves and Hollywood doctors. It was the era of the confessional memoir, where the road to stardom was paved with auditions, rejection, and a handful of tiny yellow helpers. Nobody called it addiction, of course. That word was reserved for rock stars who trashed hotel rooms, not sitcom dads and leading ladies who just wanted to sleep through a red-eye flight. But fame has a funny way of turning private habits into public spectacles. Soon enough, the tabloids started sniffing around, looking for stories of celebrities who couldn't quite manage their prescriptions. There were whispers of breakdowns on set, actors who needed more than a script to remember their lines, and talk show hosts who went off the rails in the middle of a live broadcast. The most shocking stories involved stars checking into exhaustion clinics, a euphemism everyone understood meant Valium vacation. The public lapped it up, equal parts sympathetic and scandalized, because if even the rich and famous couldn't hold it together, what hope did the rest of us have? All the while, pharmaceutical companies watched the circus from behind mirrored boardroom tables, content to let America's idols do their advertising for them. If a famous face mentioned Valium, sales spiked. If a songwriter slipped a sly reference into a hit, another 1,000,000 bottles left the pharmacy shelves. The drug was everywhere, in jokes, in headlines, in hit songs that played on repeat while dinner burned and the kids argued over the TV remote. For a brief, dizzy moment, it seemed Valium was as much a part of celebrity as sunglasses and nervous breakdowns. Its presence in pop culture wasn't just a symptom of the nation's anxiety. It was the punchline, the soundtrack, and sometimes the scandal that everyone could relate to. Whether you were famous or just trying to survive a Monday, there was comfort in knowing you weren't alone in needing a little help from Mother's Little Helper. And if the music, the headlines, and the jokes are anything to go by, sometimes the only thing more contagious than stress is the creative way we all try to cope. Valium becomes more than a pill. It's a punchline, a plot twist, and a cultural reference in every sitcom. Everyone knows someone who's on something, and Valium is the safest bet in town. Let's take a stroll through the funhouse mirror of 1970s and 1980s pop culture, where nothing is sacred and everything, including your nervous system, is up for comedic grabs. If there's one thing America does well, it's turning collective neuroses into entertainment. And Valium? It's the gold standard of this transformation, less a secret than a shared wink, less a medical solution than an inside joke for a nation doing its best to laugh through the existential dread. Sitcoms, for starters, love to mine Valium for laughs. Whenever a character was faced with in-laws, tax season, or a disastrous Thanksgiving dinner, someone would inevitably mutter, "Time for a little helper," as the laugh track roared in approval. From All in the Family to the Mary Tyler Moore Show, tranquilizers became shorthand for "Mom can't take it anymore" or "Dad's about to lose his cool." It was always delivered with a knowing glance, as if to say, "Don't worry, we're all barely holding it together." On the big screen, Valium was the surprise guest star in countless films. It slipped quietly into scripts as the go-to solution for any character's nerves. Facing disaster? Take a Valium. Just met your future in-laws? Make that too. The nervous breakdown montage became a staple, always including a dramatic reach for the medicine cabinet and a close-up of that famous yellow pill. Movie characters would confess, "I'm on something," and the audience would nod along, understanding that the line between plot device and real life had officially blurred. Advertising executives, never ones to miss a trend, leaned in. Are you living in a world that's too much? Take a moment for yourself. The soft-voiced narrators crooned in commercials, while actual ads for Valium faded with tighter regulations. The aura lingered. Everyone in pop culture seemed to be popping something, and the name Valium echoed louder than most. Even comedians got in on the act. Stand-up routines and late-night hosts were filled with jokes about how Valium was America's favorite vitamin, or that it should be dissolved in the water supply for national harmony. Johnny Carson, the king of late night, would crack wise about needing a Valium before interviews with certain guests, and the audience would howl, knowing it wasn't entirely a joke. The cultural impact didn't end with scripted entertainment. Magazines and cartoons lampooned the tranquilized housewife, the sedated businessman, and the overcommitted PTA parent. Even greeting cards got in on the action, birthday wishes paired with a fake prescription for a stress-free year. Usually signed Dr. Valium, MD. It was all fun and games, until someone's prescription ran out. By the time memes and catchphrases started circulating, Valium's place in the American psyche was sealed. Before you could even go viral, people shared stories and in-jokes about their Valium moments. Burned casseroles, lost keys, PTA meetings from hell. It was the punchline you could drop at a dinner party, and everyone would nod knowingly, half laughing, half wishing they'd brought their own supply. This cultural ubiquity came with a dark undertone. The more Valium was joked about, the more its potential downsides were minimized or overlooked. It was easier to laugh than to reckon with dependence or withdrawal. The pill became a symbol not just of relief, but of a certain emotional numbness that colored the era. Still, there was comfort in the shared language of coping. In a world where everyone was a little on edge, Valium became the universal translator, turning stress into a sitcom, panic into a punchline, and everyday life into something you could get through with a little help from your friends and maybe your pharmacist. Reports start trickling in: addiction, withdrawal, and enough side effects to fill a phone book. But the warnings are softer than elevator music. Nobody wants to harsh the nation's mellow. For most of the 1970s, Valium's reputation sparkled as brightly as the disco ball above the nation's collective head. It was safe, modern, and everywhere, prescribed for everything from nerves to mother-in-law visits. The possibility that America's favorite tranquilizer had a dark side, well, that was a conversation people were happy to leave on mute. After all, who wants to talk about dependency when the prescription is working just fine? And everyone's feeling, if not fantastic, then at least blissfully unbothered. But the cracks in the calm began to show. Quietly at first, doctors started to notice that some patients seemed to be coming back a little too often for refills. "Didn't I just see you last week?" became a common refrain in the waiting room. Second only to, "Can you make it 100 count this time, doc?" Some patients confessed to feeling jittery, irritable, or even panicked if they missed a dose. What started as an occasional treat for the nerves was morphing into something that felt suspiciously like a need. Medical journals began printing case studies that sounded like cautionary tales. Patients who couldn't stop taking Valium without suffering rebound, anxiety, sleeplessness, or worse. Headlines warned of tranquilizer dependence and withdrawal syndrome, but the message didn't make it far past the pharmacy counter. The truth was, most people didn't want to know. The comfort was too great, the ritual too embedded, and the alternative, actually feeling all those uncomfortable emotions, too daunting. Pharmaceutical companies, for their part, weren't exactly racing to sound the alarm. The ads stayed positive, the reps stayed cheerful, and the fine print about potential for habituation remained as tiny as ever. If the word addiction was mentioned, it was quickly followed by reassurances that only those with a history of substance abuse needed to worry. For everyone else, Valium was still safe and effective, the pharmaceutical equivalent of background music. The social stigma around mental health didn't help. Talking about addiction meant admitting you had a problem. And in the age of keep calm and carry on, most people would rather switch doctors than face that awkward truth. Friends joked about living on Valium, but nobody wanted to dig deeper. If you brought it up at a dinner party, the conversation quickly shifted back to something safer, like salad recipes or the price of gasoline. Doctors found themselves caught in the middle. Many genuinely wanted to help their patients, but with limited resources and a cultural expectation for quick fixes, it was easier to keep writing prescriptions. Some started cutting back, warning patients not to take their pills for too long. Others began referring people to therapy, but that solution was still viewed with suspicion. Therapy was for serious cases, not for your everyday suburban parent or accountant. By the late 70s, news outlets couldn't ignore the mounting evidence any longer. Feature stories began to appear about withdrawal horror stories, families torn apart by prescription dependence, and lawsuits aimed at pharmaceutical giants. Words like benzodiazepine crisis and tranquilizer trap made their way into the national vocabulary, sending shivers through America's medicine cabinets. But the transition away from Valium was slow and reluctant. Habits formed in years didn't break overnight, and for many, the warnings sounded abstract, a problem for someone else, not for them. The end of the golden age of tranquilizers wasn't marked by a dramatic collapse, but by a gradual dawning of awareness, the slow fade-out of the background music, as people began to realize that maybe, just maybe, there's no such thing as a free, or side effect-free, lunch. For the first time in a decade, America was forced to look past the promise of effortless calm and acknowledge the messy reality underneath. And if the process was painful, well, at least there was still elevator music. You've run out. The pharmacy says no more refills. Suddenly, you're sweating, your hands shake, and you're pretty sure your plant is judging you. Turns out, non-addictive was more of a marketing slogan. Let's walk through this suburban crisis together. You open the medicine cabinet, reaching for your trusty bottle, and your heart drops when you find only the echo of rattling plastic and a child-proof cap mocking your panic. You call the pharmacy, already rehearsing your best just-in-case story. But the pharmacist delivers the blow. No more refills until you talk to your doctor. You hang up, sweating. The room seems too bright, your tongue too dry, and your plant, usually a source of passive comfort, now looks at you with silent, leafy disdain. At first, you try to brush it off. Maybe you just need more coffee. Maybe this is what it feels like to be truly awake. Though you're pretty sure real life shouldn't come with a soundtrack of your own heartbeat in your ears. By lunchtime, you notice your hands trembling as you butter toast, and your patience for family members has evaporated into thin, Valium-free air. You snap at the dog, glare at the phone when it rings, and realize that the mild, blissful fog you've been floating in has vanished, replaced by the world's worst hangover, minus the fun memories. It gets worse. Sleep, once a nightly gift from the pharmaceutical gods, turns into a sweaty negotiation. You toss and turn, blankets twisted, brain racing with everything from overdue bills to that thing you said at the PTA meeting in 1976. By morning, you're groggy and irritable. But the only thing in your medicine cabinet that could help is a bottle of children's aspirin and a half-used jar of Vicks Vapo Rub. It doesn't work. The physical symptoms are only half the fun. Emotionally, you're on a roller coaster with no seatbelt. Every minor frustration is magnified. Someone left crumbs on the counter? Full existential crisis. Your spouse asks where you put the car keys. You consider moving out. The doorbell rings, and you experience the rare sensation of both fight and flight. All the things Valium helped you keep at bay. Worries, sadness, the gnawing sense that your plant is indeed judging you, come roaring back, louder than ever. This is when you start to realize just how much the non-addictive slogan was wishful thinking. The term withdrawal moves from being something you read about in magazine articles to something you experience in real time, like an unwanted house guest who won't stop rearranging your furniture. You remember all the ads, the soothing voice promising a new lease on life, and wonder why nobody mentioned the part where returning the keys to your old life meant paying emotional back rent. Now, you begin the delicate negotiation with your doctor. You make the appointment, practicing what you'll say. "I just need a little, something to take the edge off," you mutter in the car, ignoring the way your hands won't stop tapping the steering wheel. At the doctor's office, you're suddenly one of those patients, the ones the nurses whisper about. The doctor listens, nods, and begins to explain the phrase tapering off in a tone usually reserved for nervous zoo animals. You leave with a schedule, a stern warning, and a vague sense of betrayal. At home, the process is slow. Every day, a little less Valium, a little more real life. You start to learn new coping mechanisms. Deep breaths, walks around the block, maybe even a yoga class you swore you'd never attend. It's not easy. Some days, you miss the old, tranquilized you. Other days, you realize you're finally feeling things again, for better or worse. The world is louder, yes, but it's also sharper, crisper around the edges, even if those edges are sometimes a little painful. Running out of Valium isn't just a plot twist. It's a crash course in the fine print of pharmaceutical promises. You survive, but not quite the same. And somewhere, your plant finally stops judging you, probably because you remembered to water it. As the 80s dawn, doctors start writing new prescriptions, and Valium's reign comes to a slow, slurred end. But the cycle continues. Only the names change. Welcome to the era of Xanax and Prozac. The calendar flips to 1980, and suddenly, the cultural mood ring changes color. The disco balls get packed away, the mustaches trimmed, and someone somewhere invents power walking. But for all the surface-level change, one thing stays constant. Americans are still stressed, anxious, and searching for that magic bullet to take the edge off modern life. As the last Valium commercials fade into the distance, the pharmaceutical industry is already warming up its next act. Doctors, burned by the growing headlines about dependency and withdrawal, start looking for safer options, at least safer by the standards of an era that thought spandex was a great idea. Enter Xanax, Valium's younger, hipper cousin, promising faster relief and, supposedly, less risk of turning you into a permanent extra on The Walking Dead. Advertised as a miracle for panic attacks and generalized anxiety, Xanax slides smoothly into the American medicine cabinet, right where Valium left a gap. If you had nerves, Xanax was your new friend. If you missed the calm of the 70s but needed something just a little more now, Prozac was waiting in the wings, ready to take depression out for a very long walk. The ads change, but the message stays the same. Don't suffer. There's a pill for that. The packaging is sleeker, the side effects list is a little longer, and the fine print has grown from a polite footnote to something that might require bifocals. Still, the essential bargain remains. Modern life is hard, and you don't have to feel it if you don't want to. Therapists may be on the rise, but pills are still the American shortcut to peace of mind. It's not just doctors and patients, either. Culture adapts to the new normal. In the 80s and 90s, TV and movies start to talk about therapy in less hushed tones, but pharmaceuticals still steal the spotlight. Xanax becomes the punchline in stand-up comedy, the secret weapon of harried yuppies and stressed-out soccer moms, the thing you ask for by name if you know someone who knows someone. Prozac Nation enters the lexicon, spawning memoirs and magazine articles about a generation on antidepressants, openly, unashamedly, and with a healthy dose of humor. As the years roll on, the cycle keeps spinning. New medications hit the market, each one promising a better, more manageable you. SSRIs, SNRIs, beta blockers, alphabet soup for the soul. The stigma around mental health starts to melt, but the pressure to keep functioning, keep performing, and keep calm never goes away. Pharmacies get busier, waiting rooms more crowded, and somewhere, a pharmaceutical executive is once again toasting a banner sales quarter. For some, the shift brings genuine hope, therapy, group support, and the slow embrace of mental health as a real priority mean fewer people have to suffer in silence. For others, the roller coaster of prescription and withdrawal just gets a new coat of paint. The Xanax generation becomes as much a punchline as the Valium generation, and Prozac becomes shorthand for "I'm coping, thanks for asking." Looking back, it's clear the 1980s didn't end America's love affair with pharmaceutical calm. They just rebranded it. Today, whether you reach for a meditation app, a weighted blanket, or the latest antidepressant, the legacy of the Valium era lingers. The pills change, the bottles change, but hope remains the same, that maybe, just maybe, there's a shortcut to serenity. And if not, well, there's always next year's miracle cure. Decades later, America looks back at its tranquilized decade and wonders, did Valium solve our problems, or just give us something new to worry about? The answer's fuzzy. But so was most of the 1970s. Let's pause for a moment of quiet contemplation. Something that, ironically, the entire country once tried to achieve by swallowing a little yellow pill. The 1970s are now a distant, soft-focus memory, a kaleidoscope of shag carpeting, disco beats, and dinner parties where everyone seemed just a little too calm. But in the rearview mirror, the edges come into focus. What exactly did Valium do for a generation under pressure? And what did it leave behind? On the surface, the answer seems easy. Valium helped millions cope. For the harried housewife, the anxious accountant, the dad with one too many tension headaches, the drug offered something precious. Relief. It softened the edges of hard days, muted the blare of bad news, and turned high-strung evenings into a string of bearable moments. In living rooms across America, people found they could handle crying children, demanding bosses, and existential dread with just a little less panic and a little more patience. For many, that was enough. The pill did its job. But the story doesn't end there. For every person who felt steadier, there were others who slid quietly into dependency, their world shrinking down to the size of a prescription bottle. The side effects, first ignored, became harder to miss. Fuzzy thinking, lost days, and the creeping realization that peace purchased on credit must eventually be paid back with interest. As medical knowledge advanced and more people struggled to stop taking the drug, the country faced a new kind of collective anxiety. What if the cure had become part of the problem? Looking back, the culture of the time almost guaranteed Valium's runaway popularity. Americans had inherited a post-war promise of endless prosperity, then watched it slip through their fingers, replaced by recession, social change, and a sense that nothing was as simple as it used to be. Therapy was rare, self-reflection rarer still, and the stigma around mental health meant that asking for help often meant asking for a prescription, not a conversation. "Don't worry, take a pill," became the chorus, and Valium, the unofficial anthem. So, was it worth it? It depends on where you're standing. For some, Valium made the decades survivable, offering, if not happiness, at least the illusion of control. For others, it delayed necessary change, silencing signals that maybe life needed to be rearranged, not just suppressed. Like so many quick fixes, the drug papered over the cracks but couldn't repair the foundation. The country kept moving, but beneath the mellow, a deeper restlessness grew. Yet, even in hindsight, it's hard to cast judgment. People did the best they could with the tools they had. Valium was a tool, sometimes helpful, sometimes harmful, but always understandable in a world that seemed to spin a little faster every year. As the decades rolled by, society learned, slowly, reluctantly, that peace of mind is a little more complicated than a single solution. Mental health became something to talk about, not just treat. Other therapies emerged, support groups blossomed, and the idea that it's okay not to be okay finally gained traction. But if you look closely, the lessons linger. We still long for shortcuts, still hope for instant calm in a bottle or an app. The Valium years remind us. It's tempting to reach for easy answers, but real peace is often messier and more meaningful than anything that comes in a child-proof cap. So as America glances back through the haze, the verdict is gentle, bittersweet, and, like the decade itself, a little bit blurry. Was it worth it? Sometimes. For a while. Till it wasn't. And then, like all eras, it passed, leaving us to wonder what we might do differently the next time life feels too loud to bear. In the end, what did Valium really provide? A break from the madness, a pause on the panic, a nap in the middle of the noise. For better or worse, it was the decade where sleep came in a bottle and peace was just one prescription away. Nighttime in the 1970s felt different, more uncertain, more restless. And yet, for many, just a little bit softer around the edges. Picture the scene. The sun goes down over a quiet suburban block. Lawn sprinklers hiss. The last ice cream truck melody fades. and homes fill up with the warm glow of lamps, TV static, and the smells of casserole lingering in the air. It's been a long day of work, kids, traffic, bills, and the nightly news reminding you that the world outside is just a little too chaotic for comfort. So you follow the same ritual as millions of other Americans. You brush your teeth, wash your face, and, depending on how the day went, reach for the medicine cabinet. There, between the dental floss and the mystery ointment you haven't used since the bicentennial, sits the bottle of Valium. It's your silent bedtime companion, the thing that promises to dim the noise in your head and hush the buzzing thoughts that otherwise keep you staring at the popcorn ceiling for hours. It was, in some ways, the national lullaby. The stresses of the day, the worries about tomorrow, the heartbreaks and minor humiliations, all could be softened, if only for a few hours, by a tiny pill and a glass of tap water. You slip under the covers, radio playing just loud enough to muffle the arguments next door or the distant barking of a neighbor's dog. The world blurs at the edges. Your breathing slows, and at last, the restless 1970s mind is granted what it needs most: escape. Of course, it wasn't just about sleep, it was about what sleep represented. A pause from expectation, a chance to recharge, a brief release from all the things that felt too heavy to carry in the daylight. For the first time in a generation, there was a sense that you didn't have to white-knuckle your way through every anxious night. Why lie awake, reliving every awkward PTA meeting or unfinished project, when you could let chemistry step in and do the heavy lifting? Take as needed, the doctor said. So you did. There were jokes about it, sure. America's favorite way to catch some Z's. Why count sheep when you can count on Valium? The commercials never explicitly said you'd sleep better, but the subtext was clear. And the truth is, for many, it worked. Pillowed by pharmaceutical reassurance, you could nap through bad weather, family drama, even the knowledge that your avocado green carpet was never really going to be clean again. But the story isn't all soft focus and sweet dreams. Some people found themselves dependent, needing more and more help to find the same restful sleep. The mornings sometimes came with a little extra fog, a slower start, and the uneasy sense that you'd slept through something important. Like everything else in the 1970s, the solution was quick, easy, and sometimes just a little too good to be true. Still, for a decade, sleep in America came with the faint taste of chalk and the gentle assurance that, for at least one night, you wouldn't have to fight your own brain. There's comfort in that, even if the comfort was a little borrowed, a little manufactured. The era of bottled peace may be behind us, but the longing for a good night's sleep, one free of worry and restlessness, remains as universal as ever. So, as you close your eyes tonight, be grateful for whatever lulls you to sleep: a fan's gentle whir, the memory of a favorite song, or just the knowledge that, at least for now, you don't have to chase calm in a bottle. In the 1970s, sleep was both the goal and the reward, and the dream was, above all, to simply sleep tight. It's the annual office holiday party. Your boss is doing the funky chicken, the IT guy spiked the punch with something stronger than Christmas cheer, and someone's crying in the coat closet over the Xerox machine. There's a silent agreement among co-workers. If the awkwardness gets too much, the Valium bottle is never far from the cheese tray. The office party is supposed to be a reward for a year of hard work, a chance to kick back with your colleagues, eat questionable hors d'oeuvres, and pretend, just for an evening, that you're all friends. But let's be honest, it's a minefield of forced small talk, overzealous party planners, and the lingering fear that someone will make a career-ending confession after their third cup of punch. The decorations are a festive mishmash of blinking lights, wilting poinsettias, and a hand-lettered Happy Holidays banner that's missing at least one L. You walk in clutching your secret Santa gift, a scented candle, because you panicked and forgot who you were buying for. The boss greets you at the door with a handshake that's both too firm and too damp. Someone from accounting is already 3 steps ahead of you, double-fisting gingerbread men and socializing with the cheese plate. In the far corner, a small group is clustered around the punch bowl, laughing too loudly and swapping rumors about next year's layoffs. The music is stuck in a time warp, disco classics, novelty songs, and the same 6 tracks you've heard at every office gathering since Nixon left office. When YMCA comes on, your supervisor tries to organize a group dance, but only succeeds in spraining something and knocking over a tray of deviled eggs. The marketing team, never ones to miss an opportunity, start handing out branded pens and leftover promotional stress balls, which are soon bouncing around the room like tranquilized ping-pong balls. It's not long before the real party starts. The gossip. Someone leans in and whispers about a possible romance between 2 co-workers. Someone else mentions the rumor that the regional manager once got fired for napping under their desk. The conversation bounces from office politics to whose Jell-O salad was most likely to be a biohazard, and back to whether the company will ever fix the coffee machine. Laughter is a little too loud, smiles a little too forced. This is where Valium makes its discreet entrance. Maybe it's just a knowing look exchanged between the exhausted admin assistant and the project manager. Maybe it's a quick trip to the restroom to freshen up. Red, regain composure, and check if your fly is still up. There's a camaraderie in quiet calm, a kind of office survival pact. You know that if the cringe factor gets too high, there's always a little help nearby, wrapped in a brown prescription bottle with a faded label. For a certain tier of employees, holiday cheer comes with a side of pharmaceutical serenity. As the night wears on, inhibitions loosen just enough for brave souls to attempt karaoke. Stayin' Alive and Dancing Queen echo through the conference room, and someone from HR records everything on a camcorder for team-building purposes. Somewhere between the limp carrot sticks and the half-hearted gift exchange, you realize the mood in the room has mellowed. Maybe it's the Valium, maybe it's the punch, or maybe everyone is just too tired to care anymore. Eventually, the party sputters to an end. You collect your coat, your gift bag, and whatever dignity you still possess. There's a final round of awkward hugs, promises to get lunch soon, and a collective sigh of relief as everyone heads for the exit. Outside, the cold air feels sharp and honest, a reminder that you've survived another year, another party, and another round of office chaos. In the end, the office holiday party is less about celebration and more about endurance. Valium doesn't make it magical, but it does make it manageable, a small secret ingredient in the punch bowl of corporate life. And in a world where awkwardness is unavoidable, sometimes a little calm goes a very long way. You've bravely buttoned yourself into a shirt that's 90% static electricity, 10% petroleum byproduct, and the patterns are so loud you might trigger an episode of disco-induced anxiety. In the 1970s, half your stress was from global events. The other half came from trying to wear corduroy pants without setting the house on fire. Let's talk about getting dressed in the 1970s. Your wardrobe looks less like a closet and more like a psychedelic art exhibit curated by someone who just failed a color blindness test. Shirts are orange, purple, and green, sometimes all at once, and sometimes in patterns that could double as optical illusions. Plaid is everywhere. On jackets, on pants, even on socks. There's no such thing as subtle. If your outfit doesn't make the neighbor's eyes water, you're not trying hard enough. The materials are an adventure all their own. Polyester is king, promising no wrinkles, no worries, as long as you don't mind the fact that it never breathes. and can turn a light jog into a personal steam bath. Pulling on a polyester shirt in the dry winter air is a dangerous game. One wrong move, and you risk shocking yourself, or a loved one, into next week. And then there's corduroy. With its signature swish swish that announces your arrival several seconds before you actually enter a room. Running in corduroy is a fire hazard. Sitting in it for too long leaves you with what can only be described as groove marks. Fashion is supposed to be fun, but in the 70s, it's just one more thing to worry about. Your collar is so wide you have to be careful in a strong wind, and your flared pants are always threatening to sweep the floor, and your dignity out from under you. If you wear platform shoes, every staircase is a near-death experience. You look great in family photos. As long as nobody tries to hug you, the static shock could knock out the lights in half the neighborhood. For women, the anxiety doubles. You're expected to master hot rollers, blue eyeshadow, and mascara so thick it could anchor a small boat. Pantyhose are required even in July. And if you snag them, which you always do, your entire day is ruined. Your options are miniskirts, which leave you freezing, or maxi dresses, which threaten to tangle in the wheels of your station wagon. Purses are massive, big enough to carry a makeup kit, a hairbrush, and inevitably a backup pair of pantyhose. Men aren't spared, either. The leisure suit is the ultimate sartorial gamble. Will you look suave and sophisticated, or like a children's television host who moonlights as a used car salesman? The answer, most days, is both. And don't forget the neckties, 3 feet long, 4 inches wide, and patterned with something that could have been inspired by a lava lamp or a fever dream. No wonder Valium made sense. You'd need a tranquilizer just to get through the morning routine. Zippers stick, buttons pop, and your dry cleaner is on speed dial. On a rotary phone, naturally. You pray for Casual Friday, but casual in the 1970s just means a slightly less aggressive plaid. By the end of the day, you're unpeeling your shirt like you've just returned from an Arctic expedition, and half expecting the static charge to fry the television. Fashion in the 70s wasn't just about self-expression. It was a daily battle against discomfort, embarrassment, and the existential dread of being immortalized in school pictures for decades to come. There's a reason every family photo from the era features at least one person with a haunted look in their eyes. It wasn't the camera flash, it was the knowledge that somewhere, somehow, another pair of polyester pants was waiting to test your last nerve. If you managed to get through a week without melting, frizzing, or short-circuiting the family pet, you deserved a medal, or at least a refill on your prescription. Because in a world where every day's a runway, and every outfit a hazard, sometimes the only sane response is to laugh, sigh, and promise yourself that next decade you'll wear jeans and never look back. You sit wedged between a woman knitting nervously and a man reading last year's Time magazine like it contains answers. The waiting room isn't just for coughs and colds anymore. It's a gathering of the tense and the tired, united by the shared hope that the doctor will sign off on your refill and maybe give you a lollipop for the drive home. It's 1977, and you're back in the same vinyl chair you've warmed at least a dozen times this year. The wallpaper is a faded floral print. The clock ticks in a slow, existential rhythm. And the potted plant in the corner is holding on to life by sheer willpower. The air smells faintly of disinfectant, and the collective anxiety of everyone who's ever waited here for test results, advice, or, most importantly, a plate, signature, on a prescription pad. You're not alone in your quest. The waiting room is full, as always. There's the woman with 3 kids in tow, all sticky with lollipops and the unspoken threat of a tantrum. There's the elderly man who's convinced his blood pressure rises every time he listens to the evening news. Everyone seems just a little bit on edge, the nervous energy bouncing off the linoleum like invisible ping-pong balls. People cough, sigh, flip through outdated magazines, and avoid making direct eye contact with anyone who might try to start a conversation about how things used to be. In this peculiar ecosystem, everyone knows the unspoken rules. You keep your voice down, keep your business private, and offer sympathetic nods to anyone who seems like they might crack before their name is called. The magazines are always the same. National Geographic from 1972, a medical pamphlet about the dangers of too much stress, and that one issue of Reader's Digest everyone's already memorized. Occasionally, someone brave enough attempts small talk, usually about the weather or the parking situation, but conversation never strays too close to the real reason everyone's here. The nurse appears at the doorway like a benevolent gatekeeper, clipboard in hand, calling names with just enough authority to make you sit up straighter. Everyone perks up at the sound, silently calculating the odds that they'll be next. If you're lucky, you'll get called quickly. If not, you'll have to endure the radio playing easy listening hits and the sound of someone's stomach growling from across the room. When it's finally your turn, you march into the inner sanctum, the examination room. The doctor greets you with a tired smile and the kind of efficiency that comes from seeing 100 patients a week. You describe your symptoms, tension, sleeplessness, the kind of low-level dread that seems to hum beneath the surface of everyday life. The doctor nods, scribbles something in your chart, and, after a few standard questions, slides a prescription across the desk with the ease of a seasoned dealer. Sometimes there's a brief, perfunctory warning about use as directed. But more often it's just a friendly take care now, and you're on your way. Back in the waiting room, you pause at the reception desk to schedule your next visit, already planning your route to the pharmacy. There's a little sigh of relief, a knowing look exchanged with the woman knitting her 3rd scarf of the hour, and a quick grab for a lollipop from the bowl by the door. Cherry, as always. It's a small reward for making it through another round of suburban stress management. For many, the doctor's waiting room becomes a kind of community center, a quiet club for those united by a shared prescription and a mutual understanding that life is just a little too much sometimes. Here, in the world's most anxious lounge, you realize you're not alone. Everyone's hoping for a refill, a moment of peace, and maybe, just maybe, the secret to surviving it all, the smile. So as you settle under your blanket tonight, in a world with noise-cancelling headphones, on-demand therapy, and the miracle of sleep aids that don't require a signature from your local pharmacist, maybe take a second to appreciate how far we've come. Because surviving 1970s, America wasn't just about dodging lava lamps, enduring dinner parties in a fog of polyester and aquanet, or navigating a world where sideburns and sedatives were both considered practical solutions to stress. It was about millions of ordinary people, parents, workers, dreamers, doing their best to keep it together, one little yellow pill at a time. Looking back, it's almost heroic in its own absurd way. Facing inflation, disco, and existential dread, Americans reached for the nearest solution, even if it came with a warning label